So, today, we're going to talk about a real fiasco. We're looking at how one of India's biggest airlines, a company literally famous for its efficiency, flew straight into a massive and, get this, a completely self-inflicted crisis. We're talking grounded flights, furious passengers, and a stock price in freefall. Let's break down exactly what went wrong. You know that feeling, right? We've all been there. You're stuck at the airport, just staring at that departure board, hoping and praying. And then you see it. Your flight is canceled. It is the worst. Now, I want you to imagine that exact frustration, but happening to thousands of people all across the country, all from the same airline, all at once.
Here is the number, the one number that just says it all. 1,600. That is the number of flights IndiGo canceled in a single day on December 5th. This wasn't just a bad day at the office. This was a total, system-wide, operational meltdown.
Okay, so how on earth does a leading airline, a giant in the industry, just grind to a halt like that? It's a huge question. Let's dig into the timeline and see how this all went down.
You know, this whole disaster didn't just pop up out of nowhere. It was kind of like a slow burn that suddenly turned into an explosion. The trouble really started brewing back in November, with over 1,200 cancellations. And look at their on-time performance. That's a huge deal for airlines. It just plummeted from a pretty solid 84% all the way down to 68%. Then, bam, December 5th hits, and it's the final blow. Another 1,600 flights are just axed, leaving thousands and thousands of people completely stuck. Right, and a failure this big, this public, it never just stays at the airport. No way. The fallout hits the stock market and gets the attention of the government, and it happens fast. And boy, was the market's reaction swift, and it was brutal. On December 8th, investors just hammered the stock, wiping more than 8% off its value in one day. That's the market basically screaming, "We do not like what we're seeing." So, of course, all this chaos catches the eye of the regulators. India's aviation authority, the DGCA, they jumped in immediately. They sent show cause notices right to the top, the CEO and the COO. And that's a really serious move, basically telling them, you need to explain yourselves, now. They also ordered the airline to refund every single customer right away, showing just how worried they were about the passengers. Which brings us to the big question, right? What was actually behind all this? What caused it? It wasn't bad weather. It wasn't some massive technical problem with their planes. The real answer, it lies in a rule change, a change that the airline knew about well in advance.
The culprit has its kind of boring-sounding name, FDTL rules. It stands for Flight Duty Time Limitations. But listen, these are not just some bureaucratic headache. They're absolutely critical safety regulations. Their whole purpose is to keep pilots from getting too tired by putting very strict limits on how long they can fly and work.
And here's the kicker. These rules got a major update that kicked in on November 1st. Just look at the difference here. Before, a pilot could do up to 6 landings in one shift. The new rule? It slashes that down to just 2 or 3. It also got way stricter about what counts as night duty. So what does this all mean? Well, it's pretty simple. You suddenly need a lot more pilots to fly the same number of planes. And that right there is where IndiGo completely dropped the ball. I mean, this quote from the rating agency Moody's just says it all. This wasn't a surprise. This wasn't some random event. It was, and I'm quoting here, a failure of inadequate planning and weak preparedness. Ouch! And Moody's didn't just stop at a nasty quote. Oh no, they took action. They issued a critical downgrade that really gives us a fascinating peek under the hood at the airline's internal problems. Their analysis just zeroed in on one very specific and really telling weakness inside the company. And here it is. Moody's actually downgraded IndiGo on its human capital score. Now, in plain English, that's a score for how well you manage your own people, your workforce. They bumped the score from a 3 to a 4. And with this system, higher is not better. A higher number means more risk. This was a huge red flag waving over their HR department. So, why the downgrade? Well, Moody's was crystal clear. It was because of the adverse impact of slower hiring. Think about it. IndiGo knew these new pilot rules were coming, rules that demanded more pilots on staff, and they just didn't hire enough people in time. It's a classic failure of planning, probably because they were so focused on keeping costs down that they left themselves absolutely no room to adapt. Moody's also sent out a big warning flare, saying the pain was far from over. They pointed to future losses from all the cancellations and refunds, the potential for big fines from regulators, And maybe worst of all, serious damage to their reputation that could hurt their business partnerships. The bottom line? A direct hit to their profits for the next whole year. So, the big question now is, where does IndiGo go from here? How do they pull out of this nosedive? Let's take a look at their path forward and the really tough questions that are still hanging in the air.
I mean, this timeline is just wild. It shows you how incredibly fast everything just fell apart. The new rules hit November 1st. By the end of the month, the system is already cracking, with over 1,000 cancellations. A few days later, on December 5th, it's a full-on emergency. The government had to step in with a temporary fix, but as you can see, by the 8th, the financial damage was well and truly done.
So right now, IndiGo is on a very, very tight leash. They got a temporary break from the rules, but they are under a microscope. The airline has to hand in detailed reports every 2 weeks, and they have to give the government a 30-day roadmap that shows exactly how they're going to finally get their act together and follow the regulations.
And if you take away just one thing from all this, let it be this. This was not bad luck. This wasn't a freak storm or a technical glitch. This was a completely preventable management failure. It was a failure to prepare for a major change that everyone in the entire industry knew was coming for a long, long time.
Which really leaves us with the million-dollar question. IndiGo built this incredibly powerful brand on 2 things, being on time and being efficient. And right now, that reputation is in tatters. So can they actually regain their altitude? Can they fix this? Or is this the kind of blunder that causes deep, long-term damage? The answer to that is going to shape the future for one of India's biggest airlines.